So just briefly before I introduce the panel, Tradition Capital Bank, I joined the bank in July of this year, so I'm a newcomer to Tradition. I'm an evangelist for it as well. So we are a $2.3 billion commercial and private bank. I'll tell you a bit of the facts, but really I joined because it has a big heart. So facts would be $2.3 billion, second largest privately held bank in the state. Really cool, 140 employees, $33 million legal lending limit, so we can do all those things really well. Why I joined, this bank has a heart, and we take care of clients and our communities in a generous way. So I love that about Tradition, love working there, and our clients love that experience as well. Back in May, the Business Journal said about Tradition, Tradition is one of Minnesota's sturdiest banks. Cool, that's great. That's a good headline and a headline of lots of other types of banking news these days. So sturdy bank with a great heart. Love Tradition. All right, now on to the panel. And Aaron wasn't exaggerating when he said geniuses, so you guys are gonna have to live up to that. All right, so Brian Adamek. Brian is the founder of eWealth Partners, a financial planning firm focusing on entrepreneurs and business owners. When he's not working, he likes to share his opinion on the Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift relationship. He likes to watch football and hang out with his wife and 5, soon-to-be 6 kids. Brian, welcome. And John Chabot. John is the VP Sales of Surest. He brings 15 plus years of experience in employee benefit space. John manages a team that is responsible for the distribution of the Surest product line in the mid-market. And then prior to Surest, John was a member of the senior exec team for a large national consulting firm where he ran the regional employee benefit operations. He also was had an advisory role with Minnesota Blue Cross Blue Shield and Medica. John's really passionate about being a disruptor and an innovator in the insurance space to make healthcare accessible and affordable for people and their employers. Welcome, John. And Sally Biel is a business advisor and has been with Insperity for 6 years. In her role, she helps business owners and leadership teams with programs to be a great place to work and take care of their people. Sally is a connector, and I'm sure a familiar face to many of you in the room. Sally, welcome. All right, Ryan Burt is a practice leader at USI, brings a wealth of knowledge and experience in navigating the complexities of employee benefits. With over 13 years in the industry, Ryan has developed a deep understanding of the evolving healthcare landscape, emerging trends and innovation, and their impact on employers and employee alike. Proven track record in helping organizations balance the challenges of offering competitive, comprehensive benefits while managing costs effectively. Welcome, Ryan. And John Naughtin. John is a director of client partnership of the Finance and Accounting Interim Solutions Group at Versique Search and Consulting. John has had more than a dozen years in different finance roles before moving to this role where he gets to help clients fill the very needs that he used to have in his prior finance roles. This experience provides John with a unique ability to truly understand his clients, their needs, and offer strategic custom solutions. So welcome, John. Genius panel, let's get right to the first question. And you can see that Aaron, as he was putting together the panel of experts, you have employee benefits, we've got economics, financial planning, wealth, we have talent. And you know, when we think about business owners and the things that keep business owners up at night, it's generally, right now, it's inflation, rates, economy, labor, the quality of, and the availability of. So this is a great panel. So let's start with an overarching question, and really anyone can jump in first. So what is the number one question that your clients are asking you about the upcoming year in 2024? Let me say, Sally, why don't you start, and then we'll go from there.
Great. Welcome, everybody. So the number one kind of change that's coming into effect in January is the new regulation on safe and sick. Quick raise of hands, who are business owners who have an employee? Okay, this is you, and you got to get ready by January 1, right? So it means a couple of different things. You have to be allowing your employees to utilize this time. They get 48 hours a year. There's lots of different caveats to it. You can carry it over. You have to give them the data behind it, like how much they've accrued, how much they have left, how much they've used. You have to include this in their handbook, and on onboarding, you're also going to have to let them be aware of the policy. So just a lot of different things. That's really one of the number one things that we're helping our clients with this November, December, is getting them up to date on that whole change in Minnesota legislation. The other piece is the cannabis laws that they went into effect in August, right? So there's some different areas there. It's like, what can you do from a testing perspective? What's your policy at work? And then what's your policy for non-work time, right? So just some challenges there for individuals on whether or not it applies to them and how to apply that to their own work policies.
All right, I'd be mindful of my volume here. I've got a former colleague that made a not so subtle reference that maybe I don't need the mic here, so you guys in the front let me know. So again, obviously at Versique, I'm coming from a talent perspective and talking about talent in the labor market for predominantly professional roles. And the number one question I'm getting from clients is just what are we seeing in the market? What are we expecting from I'll call it a client versus candidate driven marketplace, right? And kind of who's got leverage, if you will. What I'd say is, not just in our finance and accounting world, but across all the different practice groups at Versique, is that it feels like it's still what I'd call a candidate-driven market for those good to great candidates. You know, a lot of those folks just aren't leaving, aren't necessarily available. So, you know, we expect to see that to continue certainly through 2024, and I think that's where a lot of clients that come to us are just trying to make sure they're having those proactive discussions about how do we keep the great people we've got, and then how do we augment that workforce with that good to great when available.
Difficult to get people. There's pressure to pay more, to have better benefits, and that's kind of ahead with healthcare costs are increasing. So part of that labor challenge in the market really affected healthcare, as we all know, and we're starting to see kind of the aftermath of having to pay docs more, nurses more, et cetera. And so you kind of have these two pieces coming to a head. Still be competitive, still offer a lot, but also costs are going up. And so the number one question is, how do we stay competitive and how do we do it more cost effectively? That question's been a lot more prevalent in the last 6 months than maybe the last 3 years in our business, of really trying to get more efficient and more output of what we currently offer or what a business currently offers.
I'm probably a natural follow to Ryan, so Ryan being one of our distribution partners, so a health insurance carrier, and we would distribute through folks such as Ryan and Sally. Markets. There's other biosimilars, right? And we've got these biosimilars. There's probably 5 or 6 in the marketplace right now that are driving costs up. It's kind of a lottery right now. They're life-saving drugs. They apply to a very, very, very few people. But if those people are on your health plan as an employer, it gets to be an extraordinary cost. There's about 5 in the market right now, 5 to 10. There's about 10 to 20 that are coming into market in the next, call it 10 years. And so the unfortunate part is those all cost money. The fortunate part is, again, they don't apply to a huge portion of the population, but it's certainly something that people are asking a lot about, is how are we going to control the cost of those drugs that are driving costs up significantly for employers.
The number one question that I'm getting is not about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. That was a play of the podcast with Aaron, the Scrambled Egg. So take a listen to that if you want to hear that dating advice. But this time of year, the number one question I get is all around tax planning. And kind of the point that I want to drive home, especially for business owners, I mean, it can be in employees as well, is that if your income is going to be different, substantially different this year compared to next, then you should probably be doing some planning, right? So I'm working with a few business owners right now where it wasn't a great year, and so we're actually looking at how can we actually recognize some income. So I mean, in our world, that could be through Roth conversion, it could be realizing gains, and vice versa. If there's
somebody else can talk to this better than I, but we can watch your mouse moves and how often your screen changes, and like none of us want to be dealing with that, right? So we got to continue to work hard so that we can earn that. Maybe one of the other things I'll say, and I'm sure more will come to me, but the equitable factor or the fairness, because there are certain industries, there are certain careers, there are certain jobs that just don't allow us to be remote, and even in the same company. Right? And I think that's where some of the challenges really lie, is when you've got some people in your organization that can work from home. I'm in sales, I can work from home. I don't need to be in the office. But I'll tell you, that new person sitting on the other side of the wall from me is really happy I'm in the office, because they can learn so much faster, right? So there's just a lot to be considerate about, and it's not a set of policy and leave it alone. It's probably going to be an ever-changing thing. And I think I said this earlier, we're all kind of sick of talking about it, but it still is really a topic of conversation that needs to be dealt with. And I'll just kind of flip quickly, and then I'm going to hand it over. But people moved away during COVID, right? And from a business owner perspective, some of you were not ready for that. You were not set up to do payroll taxes and unemployment taxes, right? You didn't have a work comp policy in that state. You didn't know that the policies for certain industries, now you got to update your handbook, right? So there's just a lot of different legislation from state to state that employers had to all of a sudden deal with when they really were not prepared to do that. Heaven forbid you had somebody who moved to California. Who had someone move? Okay, here, I'm going to let you talk about that because this is a real thing as well.
Yeah, so a lot of unintended consequences, and again, take it from a health insurance guy, so I'm not necessarily qualified to talk about labor laws, et cetera, et cetera. It's more through experience. I can tell you I'm not a certified genius. I found that out the other day. My son is struggling in math. He's in 6th grade. I tried to help him. I'm now paying my junior $50 a week to tutor my son. So certainly not a certified genius. It's interesting though, I travel a ton for work. I go and I do a lot of events like this, whether it be speaking or panels. And one of the things I always paid attention to over the last 4 years was when I got in the air, how many cars were in the parking lots underneath me. And I would encourage you to do that because as you fly above any city in the US right now, all you see is asphalt. There is nobody, even if someone's saying like, yeah, we've got people coming into work, they don't. Like, they really, really don't. Or they are walking, which I can guarantee you when I look at medical claims, they're not walking at all. Which brings me to my second point, the unintended consequences. We are humans. We were not meant to sit in a cave by ourselves all day, every day. And so the mental health impacts of being isolated are real. Again, taking a look at claims and what we're seeing from a mental health standpoint is pretty startling. People are not doing well at all. Even the unintended consequences of, hey, you know what, you used to actually walk from the parking lot to your office or from the parking ramp through the Skyway into your building. Again, how many people through COVID working remotely think that you've actually are in better shape? Couple of people. We're remote now. Can I go? I'm like, yeah, you can work just as well from California as you can from Minneapolis. Not a problem. Well, she gets to California, and you know what? Things are a little bit more expensive in California. And all of a sudden we realize that, geez, that's a 30% increase in pay. Really valuable employee. Again, so there's all of these unintended consequences when you think about people working remotely that you really have to be thoughtful about as you think about bringing people back in, people staying remote, et cetera, et cetera.
Great, thank you. Those are really thoughtful considerations. I'm going to touch on what our structure here today, just so everybody has a kind of an understanding. We're going to go through some more questions with the panel, and then Aaron has a nice format where we're going to break into small groups for about 20 minutes, and there's some questions on the table that are just conversation starters. And the intent of that small group discussion is really to do what Coalition 9 does well, and that is build relationship, make connections, not just for today, but into the future, and then have some wisdom as well, right? And then we're going to come back after the small group discussions, and we're going to ask for you to think at your tables about the aha moments in those discussions or questions that you have coming out of those discussions that we might want to tap the panel for. So that's coming up. We'll go through more questions for the panel first. And on the subject of remote, one of the things I love about tradition where I work now is that everybody is there are cars in the parking lot. We are all on site, and it's actually a beautiful thing, John, to your point, the camaraderie, the collaboration, the power. There's an X factor in being near each other, and I'm a big believer in that. So what you said is very true. All right, so we talked about labor and some great strategies about remote work. Let's talk about the economy a little bit. Interest rates, bank safety and soundness, you name it, looming possible recession. It seems like there's a lot of negative stuff. So let's start with you, Brian, and kind of share your perspective.
Yeah, I'll maybe take two angles here. One, last year I was on this panel, and I had a similar question going into next year about the stock market, and I predicted that the market would be higher 12 months later. Well, that's pretty easy when the market was beaten up and down like 20%. So now what is going to happen in the next 12 months? I have no idea, right? That's probably the right answer here. Know that the market hasn't fully recovered. We do expect the market to not only recover, but then also we expect the market to grow, right? So there's that piece. Here, but turns out we never did turn into a recession, right? It has become more stable, and there was some positive news that came out as far as taming inflation and the expectation that interest rates likely not to go much higher. Maybe we can get your perspective. But again, kind of on the planning side, just over since January of almost 2 years ago, where interest rates on money markets were paying nothing. On money market right now, you can find 4 or 5%. And we got so trained just to keep that excess cash in your savings account, and that's not paying much. So make sure you put that money to use. A money market, I had some clients that came in and wanted to more aggressively pay down some debt. Well, it turns out that debt is at a lower rate than a money market is paying right now. And so when that time comes, yes, let's do it. But there is some arbitrage with the banks right now that we can do on the planning side. So just I know that for so long, we were just trained just to keep it in savings, not pay attention to rates. But that's a good place to look for some of that excess savings. And my take as a financial planner too is anything that we know that we don't need in the next 24 months, we should put that money to work. And it likely should be in the market, okay? And I know that we have the roller coaster ride of the markets, but if you took that strategy all throughout your life, you would be rewarded. So just kind of a culmination of where interest rates are off, and are we still heading into a recession? Well, who knows? But there's actually been some positive news over this last few months as far as the general economy.
While we're seeing if anyone on the panel wants to comment, I can certainly comment on interest rates. Interest rates are exactly what Brian said. If money markets in the 4 and 5%, starting with a 4 or 5, it is a buyer's market. So, right, if you're buying what I would reinforce is that we've heard a lot about liquidity issues at banks, safety and soundness. I want to reinforce that banks are really in good shape for the most part, right? We have regulators, they look at us, they make sure that we're doing the right things to protect depositors' money. And so like Brian said, you can go to any bank and get a money market that pays well. Working with a local bank, like a Tradition or a Flagship or another locally owned, privately held bank, you can get the return and you can still get safety and soundness. At any bank, that much. You might be concerned about going over that, but most of us are within those bounds. So I think reinforcing that safety and soundness of banks and the fact that when you do want to keep your money at a bank, really balancing it between what's in checking, what's in money market to maximize return, and then you're not sacrificing safety by being at a smaller bank. There's a flight to help their clients get PPP what is the one or two like top things that you would advise a client? And it doesn't have to be necessarily in your space. So we've got insurance, we've got wealth management, financial planning, we've got talent. But just think about, like, if you had a client coming to you, what is the
think, and maybe even dovetailing what we talked before, the key theme is I'll call it flexibility, or meeting your employees where they are, right? And whether that's in a industry that's traditionally required people to be in the office, being flexible and letting them go to that hybrid approach. Other things that maybe I shouldn't speak on specifics because I don't know all the details, but in conversations with clients of ours, we've heard unique solutions, if you will, as far as not only attracting talent but retaining talent. Best Buy has piloted a couple different things where you can work, call it 4 days a week, 80% of the time for 80% of the pay. I know their TA team specifically piloted an approach to a 6-week sabbatical at reduced pay. Shared learning, cross-training, et cetera. So when you think about that workforce, you're not at risk of being surprised if someone were to leave and having only one person with that skill set in-house.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, John. That's perfect. Sabbatical's cool. That's a really attractive thing. At Tradition, there's a 10-year, and then you get a 4-week sabbatical. So I'm really early in the phase of working towards that since I just started in July. But it's a great idea. So thanks for those thoughts. Brian?
I can share. So I'd say the biggest thing for me is time to think differently. If some of the challenges that we mentioned, you have a remote workforce, you have a multi-generational workforce, and how benefits have been offered in the past, I think there are better ways to do it. So main thing, think differently. Couple examples. We've had a lot of success with direct primary care. Instead of people having to go get visits at a healthcare facility, we actually have the healthcare facility come to them for primary care type visits. That's been a really unique piece that employers have offered in a cost-effective way, and it kind of alleviates some of the access problems. So for us, it's, I keep hearing the word disruptor. I think in our world, it needs to be disrupted, and there's a lot of ways to do it. But I think we got to get out of the past thinking and start, actually taking advantage of what's available.
All right, so from the HR seat up here, I'm going to say it's culture and kind of work purpose, right? So if you think about culture, here's what we say at Insperity. We say every business owner, you have a culture by design or you have a culture by default, but you have a culture, right? So if you think about that, and it's not just an owner's responsibility to develop that culture. You need your leadership team, you need your employees' feedback, right? What kind of company do you want to be? There's a ton of competition for talent, as you guys have heard over and over. So you want to be a culture that people want to work in and want to work at, right? And they want to give their discretionary effort because they like what they do and they like the people that they work with. I've heard culture also explained as it's the story your employees tell you when the boss is not listening about where they work and what they do, right? That's another kind of definition of culture. So, as an employer, be a great place to work. As an employee, if you're unhappy in your culture and you can't help change it, find a place where you want to work, because we spend a lot of dang time there. So we want to be happy in where we work and the things that we do.
I was supposed to give you the microphone. I apologize. I love this question, so I was hogging the microphone. It's holding on to it tight. Does anybody remember in this room, and maybe we're too young, but does anybody remember why we offered employer-based health insurance? Anybody?
Wasn't it that, wasn't it Ford, and they were bumping up against the maximum they could pay their employees, so they added the health insurance on top?
It was a way to attract and retain top talent, right? Like, hey, if we offer something additional, maybe encourage you, think about what you want those programs to do. The other thing I would ask you is, do you think the people in this room are a good representation of the employees that you either work among? Probably not, right? As you look around, this isn't like, and again, no offense, it's not the most diverse group that from looking here to looking out there. And so we're very, very diverse in our workforce, and very diverse people have very diverse needs. And so I will tell you, one of the things that I really struggle with is when we meet with employers and we see them pick benefits for themselves, not for their employees. And you likely are in a very, very different spot than where a lot of your employees are, right? 40% of Americans can't handle a $400 surprise. And I'm sure for some of you, you're like, that just blows my mind, right? It's true though. And so then you think about those benefits that you offer, are they well suited? Or do you love that HSA because you as a business owner or somebody that is a CEO or in the C-suite, it gives you a tax advantage, right? And so one of the biggest pieces of advice I would give to employers is take a look outside of your C-suite. What are your employees challenged with? What do they want? Because then that
To stand out, what I would say is for the business owners to have a clear understanding of their business finances. And for those that's not our forte, we have even members here that's what they do on the fractional side, or full-time, from Accountinuity to the Boulays of the world. Because the more you understand your own business finances, you understand kind of where the reinvestments should be. And so kind of on our side, financial planners working with business owners, entrepreneurs, like we encourage you to, that likely your best investment is going to be the right reinvestment into your business. And doing that blindly and just not understanding your income sheet to your balance sheet is just not the right. And even bankers know obviously financials quite well. So if you want to stand out, I really highly encourage you that if it's not your strong suit, is there's a lot of us members that would probably even help fellow members or guests just to better understand the financial ratios and what we should know, because when we do make the right reinvestment in our business, you'll be rewarded. So take some time to really pay attention to those numbers.
That's all great advice. And on the note of understanding your business so that you can make the best informed decisions, Brian's right. So financial planners, like Brian, bankers, like myself and others in the audience, accounting, Boulay and others, all resources to understand your own business so that you can make the best decisions. Really good. So I think we're going to have one more question for the panelists, and then I think we're going to gear up for the small group discussions. So let's ask the panel about, are there any legislative changes coming up that we might not know about that we should, or anything else that you want to add from your space? So focusing on legislative changes that you may know about that we may not, and that we should know about. So Sally, let's start with you.
feel like I kind of touched on this, but for mine, it was really the cannabis law that went into effect in August, right? And then the safe and sick leave. Those are probably the two biggest legislative changes. And I would say you're probably going to need outside support to help you make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed with both of those initiatives. I know the Chamber of Commerce had a big event but that isn't going to work.
Legislative changes. So my favorite part of our job is all the compliance we deal with. So I will say the biggest overlap is the employer safe and sick time right now. We do a lot of education out on that. There are some good legislative changes, so maybe some positive legislative changes that aren't there yet but may come into the future. Who here has heard that there is money in pharmacy before? Come on.
A lot.
2 people in the whole audience? Well, there is some transparency. So we've said it a few times. You know, I'm an insurance nerd, right? Way more than everybody in this room. But one of the things I'm very passionate about is trying to make sure that businesses we represent get a good deal or a fair deal. Pharmacy happens to be a place that there's a lot of money and profit margin, and it's all very secretive and hidden. And so there are some transparency legislation in brewing right now, and ideally would come into play that would be very beneficial for all of you offering health insurance benefits. So something to keep on your radar, little ways away from being friendly there.
I can go. From what we're seeing for our clients, for our older clients that are collecting Social Security, Minnesota passed where it's more favorable as far as how Social Security is taxable. We were one of the worst states, and probably still are in the Midwest, but they changed that where less of Social Security is taxable. That's a positive. Something as we're doing our planning, more long-term planning on the federal side, is that if Congress does nothing, the tax code will sunset back in 2026. So under President Trump, they passed the tax code and deduction, because I don't have a ton of faith that Congress will agree upon, passing tax code. So likely, I don't know. I think the default is going to default back to the higher tax code. Am I right? Is it 2026? Yeah, I always get confused. Connor's shaking his head on my team. All right.
I'll go back to the Trump era as well. Does anybody remember the Consolidated Appropriations Act? Transparency in healthcare? Anybody? Thank you, Adam. Appreciate the hand up. So there was, again, Trump era, and maybe you'll remember it this way. Hospitals will have to post prices, so when you go in, you can actually see what something costs, right? And so what that's supposed to do is drive market competition. How many people know or understand that in the state of Minnesota, you can get a lumbar spine fusion for $12,000, and you can get that same procedure for about $87,000 to $90,000? Yeah, so if we can bring some competition into healthcare, all of a sudden, hopefully, we have things that are present in the rest of the economy, right? Some market pressure. The problem that you'll see, and one of the things that I would always advise you is, most health plans, if I get a lumbar spine fusion at that place that costs $12,000, remember, I likely am just going to hit my out-of-pocket maximum, so it doesn't matter where I go. right? I'll hit my $4,000 out-of-pocket maximum. Employer or health plan is responsible for the remainder of that cost, and that's where we see that huge variance in cost. It lies on those plan sponsors' shoulders. So developing strategies to incent people to utilize those more efficient healthcare providers is very, very important outside of, again, just getting people to know what something costs.
John, anything you want to add?
We're all better off if I'm not opining on anything legal.
Awesome, love that. As we bring people back here, that conversation across the room was the room was buzzing. I love it. So looking forward to hearing some aha moments. But first let me start with saying that business owners, and a lot of you are in the room, are heroes of our economy. And so we were talking at our table, right? Those of us that work with you admire you and respect you, and that's why we do what we do. The business owners are heroes. And you have to be specialists in a lot of things. So this is really fun today to talk about things that can help you coming into 2024. So I just want to say that. All right, so at my table, Mike, there was an aha moment that Mike wants to recap, and then I'm going to call in a few others and anybody else that wants to share. But Mike, go ahead. And
okay, so we were talking about all the challenges ahead here. We were all falling deep into a dark despair. Then, my friend Nolan from the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce started giving some stats, and go ahead, Nolan.
I just necessary. So, a big what highlight is we did a big expansion report. So, studying a lot of the expansions, say what's our expansion relative to other states. The big thing we're seeing is we're not losing entire companies. A big issue with Minnesota is we're losing investment in the market. Meaning the companies that do operate here are expanding operations in other states.
Stand up. Perfect. A big issue we're seeing is the companies that are operating here and exist here for a long time are not expanding operations within Minnesota. They are moving their expansion to other states. So we're losing out on billions of dollars a year on relative to other states on the margins. It's just not quite the same as it used to be. Is our talent advantage isn't outpacing the business environment. So it's just kind of meeting two things at a bad point. So yeah, I don't know. That's a lot of doom and gloom.
Thank you, Nolan. So, Nolan actually is a really big Debbie Downer, which is true. Just kidding, Nolan. But our aha moment was that we realized that big business is failing us, and the only thing that will save us is small businesses like us here in the room, right?
all right, I love that. I know that was going in the wrong direction about the, but the upside is small business, that is for sure. The other thing I heard as I was going around is like, and Mike, I think you said this, is like, when there are bad times, it's actually a time for disruption and reinvention, resurgence.
Here's coming. You got it? Hold on. It's coming. Hold on. Calm down. Thanks, Aaron. We talked a lot about work from home and how that does not build culture like Tradition Capital Bank, how we're all in person, and we very much appreciate that. We took it a little more from the employer perspective and the bigger company perspective, but I think the positive is everything's a pendulum that swings, and maybe now that the employees have kind of the upper hand in negotiations and leverage, that the employers will gain the upper hand.
one other aha or anything anyone wants to share before I turn it back to Aaron for closing out?
How about any questions for the panelists? Any additional questions? You can throw that in there too.
All right.
Wow, this group got quiet all of a sudden.
All right. Well, this has been amazing. I am a total evangelist now for Coalition9. What a great event. The vibrancy of this group was amazing. Aaron, you have a vision that you've implemented that's really, really spectacular. So thank you to the panelists, genius panelists, as Aaron said. I was very privileged to be here, so thank you all. Thanks for everyone for attending. And Aaron, especially, thank you for the vision that you have for Coalition9 and creating community. So I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much. I want to echo what Mike said. I just think SMB, that's the great equalizer, right? Small business is the great equalizer, so we have the power to make these decisions of what we're going to do in the future. So I think that's a big part of this message, is like we learned a lot about legislation and tax laws and talent strategy and all these other things, obviously the healthcare benefits and things like that. But we, the people in this room, are the people that are the great equalizer. And, you may work for a large business, but you're empowering small businesses. So keep that in mind too. We're not trying to give a knock on the big logos that we got on the board either. So what I love about that is all of our community supporters, all of our members, everybody that's a part of Coalition9 has got that vision of changing business 9 leaders at a time. That is our vision as a community. And that's why we do things like this, is to make sure that you have the ammo that you need to move forward into this next year, but let's do it with an optimistic perspective. That's why we always talk about optimism. So make sure you're going into this next year eyes wide open. I want to thank Arleen. Arleen, fantastic job. Thank you so much. Thank you. Along with Arleen, I want to thank Tradition Capital Bank for partnering on this event. That's fantastic. I want to thank our panelists, Brian Adamek, John Chabot, Sally Biel, Ryan Burt, and John Naughtin. Thank you very much. They are also community supporters, and there are prospering level community supporters. We also have Accountinuity. I said that. It's a brand new name. So Lana Nelson, they are that's our 6th community supporter at that prospering level. I also want to thank our thriving and evolving community supporters as well. We are in the middle of our community supporter drive. I hate that word, but whatever. For 2024. So if you're interested in being a community supporter, get your logo on all of our stuff at every event. Through the podcast, there's a whole list of things that you get. Ask these guys. So we are adding community supporters through the end of the year for 2024. Come talk to me if you want to learn more about it. Talk to some of the other community supporters. I also want to thank our members. Our members are the lifeblood of this community. Our members are aligned with the vision of changing business 9 years at a time. Janice talked a little bit about why she's a member. Thank you so much for being members. If you are a member, if you are interested in a membership, we're not adding members until next year. So Q1 is when we're going to start adding members, whether it's in an open group or if it's a new group. So you can come talk to me about some of that stuff. I want to thank Emily and Amber. That's Emily and Amber right there. Emily is our event coordinator. Amber is Emily's sister. Shocker. So I want to thank them. They do all this stuff. Like, I just show up, throw on a fancy suit coat, and say a few words, and I go home. So thank you so much for making this a thing and crushing it. You are going to get a survey here at 1:15 from Cece. Cece is our virtual concierge. Goal is to have the first 6 months of the year booked from a date standpoint by the end of this year. So it gives you a little bit more time to plan and think about some of the things that you want to participate in. And we're not doing tours. They're brewing today. Threw a little curveball at us. If you want to go take a walk around the space, some of the brewers are going to talk a little bit about the building and some of the work that they do. So feel free to use the space. We have this room for the next hour or so. Feel free to hang out. If you want to continue conversations, if there's somebody that you wanted to meet, please do so, and use the space the best you can to build new relationships. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, everybody. All right. I appreciate you.